Hello Facebook, Dave Biddle, Patrick Murphy here from 24/7 Sports and Bucknuts.com after Ryan Day's Thursday afternoon press briefing after his radio show. Not a lot of huge news to report, but I think the biggest piece of information to come out of Ryan Day's little mini press conference, Patrick, was that Tyreke Smith, sophomore defensive end, who missed the opener after offseason, I believe it was surgery on his groin.
Yep.
Missed the opener and then came back for the Cincinnati game, looked really good, had a sack almost right away, and one of those vicious sacks where he just looked great. Got hurt in the Indiana game last week, and a lot of us wondered, did he re-injure the groin? It turns out, I think it might have been his shoulder that he actually hurt. Ryan Day doesn't like talking too much about injuries, but he did acquiesce a little bit and tell us it was a new injury to Tyreke Smith. He says he will update us more tomorrow. Reading between the lines, it sounds like Tyreke Smith probably won't play this week. It's Miami of Ohio. Hopefully they can get him ready, whatever this is, for Nebraska. But just what did you make of Coach Day's comments about Tyreke Smith?
Yeah, I agree with you. It sounds like he probably won't play this week, and I think in the grand scheme of things, Ohio State will be fine. It's unfortunate, though. We talked a couple weeks ago about having him back last week, about how he performed against Indiana, and we expected him to do big things we expected him to do good things against Indiana after how he performed against Cincinnati. So disappointing for him. Just got back, missed the season opener, but like we talked about before, Ohio State has a ton of depth on the defensive line. If there's a position that they can afford missing a guy, I think it's at that spot. Hopefully this is nothing too serious. Obviously they didn't need him against Indiana last week in the second half. They shouldn't need him against Miami this week. Have him ready for when the games really start to get tougher and the bullets start flying.
So this week against Miami of Ohio, the Buckeyes are favored by, it's astronomical. What is it, like 46 points or something like that? It's huge. It's like they're playing, it's like the Miami Dolphins, this week. I think their point spread's like 100 or something like that. Hey, Miami of Ohio is not trying to tank, though. They're just, they're going to be outmanned. Their coach, for those that missed it, their head coach came out. He was asked, what's it like playing against Ohio State when you're a MAC team? And he said, well, it's like going out to recess and you're playing football, and the other team gets the first 85 picks. It's like, whoa. So what you're saying is your best player could beat the Ohio State's 86th best player? I don't think so. No, I'm kidding. So this is a week where you got to stay healthy if you're Ohio State. That's number one in my book, and you get a lot of young guys a chance to play, including you did a piece for our site today, or I believe actually yesterday, Patrick, with Coach Day talking about his philosophy with redshirting players and how they can use that new rule that was enacted last year to their advantage, where guys can play up to 4 games and still redshirt. So I think that's the biggest thing this game. Stay healthy as far as the main guys and get a lot of young guys a chance to play.
Absolutely. If all goes to script, the starters should be out, by halftime. I think it would be perceived somewhat disrespectful if they take them out before then, but depending on the score, we might see that. You want to get through this game clean. You want to, not necessarily show anything that you might use in some of the bigger games, and get healthy. That's the biggest thing. Get the backups a lot of reps. I think this is a good opportunity to see what they have behind Justin Fields at quarterback. Get Master Teague some more reps, maybe even the young running backs like Steel Chambers and Marcus Crowley, Demario McCall. I could imagine getting in there. What's the depth behind the kind of starting 6 or so receivers? Maybe Garrett Wilson gets a little bit more run, really start to get him going offensively, and the same on defense, rotating guys out. We saw a number of young defensive linemen play last week late against Indiana. A couple guys got their first career sack, so getting those guys back in there and getting them used to playing college football, same at every position. It's really a game where these guys should get a lot of reps, these backup guys get a lot of reps, and you don't want anything to happen to your starters. Obviously, the schedule gets a lot more difficult next week with a trip to Nebraska, so you don't want anyone seriously hurt in this game, and you want to get out there with an easy win and a lot of guys playing some football.
Yeah, it's going to be fun seeing some of those young guys out there, assuming the Buckeyes can take care of business and get a big lead. If they don't, that'll be a big disappointment. But so look for that to happen. It's going to be fun to, as Patrick said, every position group you can focus on. But, linebacker is a group where they have guys like Taraja Mitchell and Dallas Gant and Kayvon Pope who would be starting at a lot of, not just Division I programs, but Power 5 conference teams. And Ohio State really likes their linebackers this year. Those guys probably aren't playing as much as they want defensively. They're all over special teams. We're probably going to see get a chance to see those guys a lot this week. And you touched on backup quarterback too. I found it very interesting because Gunnar Hoke transferred here. We all assumed he was going to be the number 2 quarterback. Chris Chugginoff would be number 3. So far, Maybe it's just because Chugginoff knows the offense better. Maybe it's kind of throwing a bone to the fifth-year senior, the guy that's been here the longest. So far, Chugginoff's been the second quarterback in the game when they take Fields out, and it's been Gunnar Hoke who's been third in. I tend to think if something happened, like let's say something happened in the Nebraska game, or Justin Fields, God forbid, went down, I do think they would go with Gunnar Hoke if they had to make a choice there. But what do you make of that so far? Anything to, as far as, Chugginoff right now looking like he's the number 2 quarterback?
I think it makes sense to have him coming in the game second, as you mentioned. He's been here for over a year now, whereas Gunnar Hoke just arrived at the beginning of the summer. So he understands the offense. If you're bringing a guy in late in the game, it's not anything on the line. I think that makes sense. But it would be interesting, like you said, if they do have to go with somebody because Justin Fields has to come out of the game with the game still on the line, where do they turn? Do you go with Chris Chugginoff just because he does know the offense better? I think that would speak to how far Gunnar Hoke has or hasn't come. And then what do you do if it's a longer term injury going forward when a guy has the full week to rep as the number 1? Now, let's hope that doesn't happen. Obviously, you'd like to see Justin Fields make it through this season without any sort of injury. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the options aren't great. We've discussed this before. Could these guys manage an offense? Sure. Could they do what Ohio State needs them to do to reach the goals of the Big Ten championship and the national championship? I'm not sure about that, but it is interesting. I hope for Buckeye fans' sake that you never have to answer that question, and they can continue to roll with Justin Fields and put whichever quarterback in the game when the score is out of hand.
Last thing, we know what you guys are going to be watching at 3:30 on Saturday, but at high noon, I also know what you're going to be watching. Michigan at Wisconsin. I mean, I am excited about this game. This is going to tell a lot about both these teams. Wisconsin has looked great, but they haven't played anybody. They get Michigan in Camp Randall. Michigan's banged up. Michigan has not looked good. Who knows? I tend to think Wisconsin's going to take it to Michigan, but sometimes when you feel that way, it goes the other way. One thing I will say, as good as Wisconsin's look, their quarterback Jack Cohn is completely unproven. First-year starter, only has 2 starts under his belt. Michigan's going to attack the hell out of him, so we'll see what happens. But I still think Wisconsin's going to take it to Michigan. Wisconsin's only favored by 3.5 points, though. For those that think about Wisconsin might be favored by 2 scores, Wisconsin's favored by just over a field goal. How do you see this one playing out in Madison, Wisconsin?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I think what we've seen from both these teams has been, favorite Wisconsin for sure, but then having that line be so small, basically just home field advantage for the Badgers makes me wonder what Vegas knows that maybe we don't. Michigan just looked so, out of sorts, and maybe that's not even the right word, maybe that is sorts for them. 2 weeks ago, I guess I should say, against Army, barely scraping by with that win. Obviously, they had a bye week to get ready for this game, so maybe that helps. I just don't know what to make of Michigan at this point in the season. I do think Wisconsin's legit. I think obviously they've got Jonathan Taylor, a great running back, who is going to handle the load. You mentioned the quarterback. That's still a question mark, I think, but that's been a question mark in Wisconsin before, and you've had good Wisconsin teams. I think the defense is very good. They haven't given up a point yet. As Dave mentioned, they haven't played anyone yet, but when you shut out 2 straight teams, that's usually a good sign regardless of who you're playing. Ohio State's only got 1 shutout on the year, for example. So, I think this will be a fun one. I think Michigan probably keeps it decently close. I would still bet Wisconsin if I were a betting man. I think it's probably bigger than the 3.5 spread, but I never know this early in the season, a first conference game. So this is a fun one, and I almost wish it were scheduled differently so I wasn't going into the Ohio State game there at the end and kind of missing the end of that game, because I think it'll still be close then. But we'll see. I think we do learn a lot about both these teams in this game.
Yeah, it is weird that the Ohio State-Miami game is at 3:30 and Michigan-Wisconsin is a noon kick. But hey, they're trying to emphasize more of the noon kicks this year, kind of getting back to that, so that plays into that. Well, thank you for joining us on this edition of Facebook Live. For Patrick Murphy, I am Dave Biddle. Head on over to Bucknuts.com and 24/7 Sports for more coverage from Ryan Day's press conference from today and more about Ohio State football. Thanks again, and go Bucks.